Hey, what's up, guys? So, Kendrick and I had a really nice series of exchanges at the VARF demos the other day. So I thought I would just take a shot at sort of commentating over them, kind of, I don't know, giving a little idea of what goes through my head or what I'm trying to do in the moment as I'm fighting. Um, I think it's maybe a little bit interesting just because it gives you my perspective on what I was feeling and seeing at the time, as opposed to sort of what you can see from the camera perspective or whatever. Maybe it's not interesting. I don't know. I just wanted to try something different, see how it went. So this is a first exchange. This is like a 3-minute video. I don't know how much of this I'm gonna do, but this is a first exchange. We'll just watch it through. Yeah, real quick. Nice. That's 4 seconds of fight. So. And I'm just going to walk through it just kind of slowly here. So we approach. Now, Kendrick's already up in Vomtog. We're out of measure, so I'm just in a kind of a relaxed, low, hands down, sword down sort of guard. And as we approach measure, I come up to Vomtog. I step in with my left foot to gain distance because I need to gain ground on Kendrick. Kendrick's very tall and has very, very good reach. So to get into my measure, I was going to have to take a step. And as soon as I take a step and I know I'm in measure, I know that he has to be in measure already. Which means that he's actually a little bit behind in making his cut. He might have been able to make his cut earlier. So as soon as this step finishes, I know I have to go and attack. So my sword comes out, and I'm coming pretty much straight in with the Zornhau here. So my blade claims the center. His blade is not online in the center, so I'm strong in the bind, and I have a nice chance to thrust. As I thrust, you can see here. Is there like a way for me to like just tap this? Oh, that's jumping like 2 seconds every time. How do I? Is there a way to do it like? Plus? No. I don't know if there's a setting here. Nope. Of course there's not. Okay, well, I guess I can sort of do this. So from the engagement, yeah, see, everything happens in that one missing second, of course. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. So the Zornhau comes out. It's nice and straight, and you can see that he's parried off with my sword. I've closed the line. He's not hitting me, and you can see the bend in my sword from where the Zornhau hits. But I guess it wasn't very strong or whatever. So he pushes up on the blade, pushing me out offline. He's got my sword way up. So because he's pushed my blade offline, I turn my hands and come to the other side. Now there's another little dunk in here as we watch it. It looks like he's got a kind of a little hit in here as well. Right there it goes up. So there it is. That's the like questionable little thing here. Is this tiny little thing. I called it light, and the reason I called it light was because it didn't feel like it moved very much as it hit me. Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of placed the sword. He's just come up a few inches and come back down. The sword probably only traces about a 10-degree arc back to forward. I don't know if we can. I don't know if I can even try to do that. So he's here. Yeah, see, he's up. We're basically stopped at this point, and then he kind of gives like a little tap, but it's basically going from like here, where the sword is stopped, to there, and it didn't draw across, so it didn't feel like it was a cut. He just kind of placed it. And then I'm, of course, doing the wind play, and I make the nice clean cut to the head, which you can actually see right there. Yeah, so I get that nice clean cut. So maybe he should have scored off my arm, but what it sounded like really, and what it felt like at the time, was that he had just placed the blade against my spec forearm protector. Wasn't really a good clean hit. So Yeah. And that I mean, the headshot was solid, came off um, nice and clean. I just felt like Kendrick's shot was it was just really just felt like it was placed. It was like a 10 or 15-degree arc. The blade came back and just kind of came in. It was mostly the strong of the sword, about halfway or even 3/4 of the way, or I mean a third of the way down the blade. So yeah, I actually commentated this exchange a few minutes ago just to practice doing this. This is the exchange that I really like. Just as a demonstration of a couple of principles. Again, strong and weak in the bind being a big part of it. Excuse me. Um, One of the things that you see here is that we are having trouble keeping in our measure. He's having trouble keeping me at distance with his measure, and I'm closing in too far because I need to get inside of his reach. So the first engagement here, Kendrick makes 2 Krumphaus just out of measure. There's nothing really there. I go into long point. Sorry, I'm updating something and it just did that in the middle of my video. So awesome. Yeah, I go into long point, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to regain my measure. I'm trying to find my measure, basically. So I'm using the long point guard as a speaking window, as the Sprechfenster. That's basically the idea. Is I'm trying to get some blade contact. I'm trying to do something to engage with him so that I can get some fühlen. I can get a feeling of what he's doing through the blade, because really when the blades aren't together, it's hard to sort of sense what the other person's trying to do. You're basing it on visual cues. It's somewhat guesswork. So there's the 2 Krumps back and forth. Here I am in the Langenort speaking window. He's coming around to the left side with a middle how. That didn't work. I just kind of parried that off because it wasn't really, it was out of measure. Here's the second cut. It's going to come from the right, and now that cut was pretty good. And what you kind of see here, and I should do this one in slow motion because I think this is Bear's doing. So here's the left side cut, and he comes back from the right. Now here, when he cuts from the right, I parry and wind up into Ox, and this is just like, this is pretty textbook, really. Kind of thing. He's coming with a stroke from above. I come up into Ox. I go into a thrust. He pushes my thrust offline. I'm probably a little late coming off the sword here, but he pushes my thrust offline, and now I need to go around to the other side, which is what I do here. I come around. I push his sword and hand away. We're both one-handed here. His left hand has come off the sword. My left hand has come off the sword. I'm coming off the sword to push his hands away. He's coming off the sword to defend the grapple. And I reach out. Oh, and look, you can get a nice shot of that. Can I zoom in here? No, I can't zoom in with this, but you get a nice shot of the actual hit to the shoulder and arm there. We didn't call the hit. We just kept going. So yeah. So let me just take this back a few seconds. So here you'll see Kendrick's 2 Krumphaus. I don't bother with those. Speaking window, got the bind, go into the thrust, cut to the shoulder. So once I've cut to the shoulder, I've got a hit, but it hasn't been called. I am not sure how good the hit was, so I need to do something. He's one-handed on the sword, so I immediately re-engage. He gets his hand back on the sword, and as I'm coming into thrust, this is actually really nice. Visual. You can even see the bend in my sword as he's applying pressure to my sword. He is going strong, binding strongly against my sword. He's giving pressure against my sword. So what do I do in response? I pull the blade away. It's looking. I bring my hands up, and what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to actually do one of the plays that's discussed in I think it's in Ring X section on sweeps. I'm trying to bring my pommel over his sword. So I've come back. He's followed my sword so that I can't get the Zucken. I can't twitch my sword back past his and then come down on his head. So I'm coming up over his sword with my pommel, or that's what I'm attempting to do. And again, as I do that, he raises his sword up. So my sword comes free underneath it. Now, if I had more distance here, if I wasn't stepping from here, you can see my sword is free. His arms are fully extended. His elbows are locked. So I should be bringing my sword around and cutting into a low Zwerchhau here. Instead of lifting my right foot here, I should be planting my right foot and bringing my left foot diagonally this way so that I can make a clean Zwerchhau right into here. This is a false edge cut with the back edge of the sword, basically. So this edge of the sword, which is the back edge of the sword, actually would be coming around to strike here into the ribs, into the lower right opening. But I don't do that, and instead what I do is I step in with my right foot, right? And so now I've closed into grappling distance. Somewhere here I've made the commitment to grapple, and maybe, I don't know what honestly I don't know what I saw in that moment that made me decide to grapple, but I can imagine that what I thought was his arms are fully extended. I'm in here. I don't want him to gain distance. He's backing away from me, so I need to push in. Now he pushes in as well for reasons I don't know. I'd have to ask Kendrick, but he gets planted, and he decides now to step in as well. Now again here, if my next step were to bring my foot offline around here to beside him or to behind his foot, I probably have a clean movement past him. But I don't do that. I step short. I step right up against him, so we're face to face. And now this is bad for me because I'm shorter than he is. He's taller than I am, and I mean he's got both arms up. What I'm trying to do here is something I do later in the fight, which is I try to get a hand on his wrists. Right, he's come off his sword, so I'm trying to get a hand on his wrist here, control his sword, and then bring my sword back around for another cut from the right, a one-handed cut from the right. Happens later in the fight, but it doesn't happen here. So he gets a complete bear hug going on here. So let me just bring this back a few seconds, and we'll just watch this whole thing. So there's the cut to the arm, come in, and there's him just enveloping me. He's grabbed my sword. He's wrapped an arm around me. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to take my left arm, go over his arm, and come up underneath. That's what I was trying to do maybe like 1 or 2 seconds earlier. I couldn't get my hand underneath there because that would have gotten into a nice arm lock or an elbow lock. If my arm goes over his arm here and then comes up under it, now I've got the sword in a sort of an arm lock or an elbow lock, and I can, bring my sword away. I can make a pommel strike. I can turn my body and control him. I can cut to the chest. I can cut to the belly. And he wouldn't be able to envelop me if I had done that. This hand wouldn't have been able to maintain control of me because I would have been hooked in underneath him. Could have put my palm into the side of his face. Could have extended out, locking his arm. Maybe costing him his sword. Just, some thoughts that I have in the follow-on. So he's trying to wrap my leg with his leg. He's trying to grapevine me, take me down. He's, pushing with his upper body. You can see a lot here in the next couple of frames that he's pushing with his upper body. I'm stumbling backwards because I've got a tall, more than full-grown man pushing into me. There's 2 swords in the mix here. But what I've gotten here in this frame is I've gotten 1 foot planted. I've got 1 foot planted. I'm going to drop my center of gravity. He's going to push because he's still pushing. You notice my center of gravity lowers. It's not the best throw of all time. It's an overhook. An underhook would have been better. It's a headlock, which headlocks are bad and dangerous. But I've got a foot here that's planted. I've got a foot here that's between his legs. I'm lowering my center of gravity. I'm gaining stable footing, and so you'll see what happens. He pushes, stable footing, and into the throw. And really, once the throw is over, he's going to try to sort of judo roll on top of me. He's going to try to use a jiu-jitsu move to cover my body. But it doesn't work out for him because we have to stop the fight. I had, at that point, had a hand up over toward his face. I was looking to get my leg clear and get into a mounted position. I didn't have a sword anymore. I had let go of my sword, but I could still strike with my fist. So making some jokes, save the time here in between. So now there are a couple of exchanges. One I think goes off screen a little bit. One's a little bit messy. So we'll just kind of stick with them. Okay, so here, coming in Alber, I've stayed in Alber in measure, so I've walked up in my sort of nonchalant way, and then I've stepped in to bring my sword online with him. Now here Kendrick is going in to engage, I believe, my sword. Nope, he comes in up high for my head and body. I come up with a nice looking sword. How it looks like. So I'm really coming up with a thrust because I'm coming from Alber. Yeah, so I've come up in a thrust. I've come up into a thrust in Ox, and the thrust does not come through. You can see the point of my sword over here. He's got a very strong parry. So what I should be doing is my left leg should be coming into a slope step here, and my sword should be coming around his body. That's not what happened. I kept going to my right. He kept going to his right. We circled one another. The swords are sort of crossed. His sword is over here. My sword is up here. Kind of just big whiffer. Point on line. And his came through as we went around. That's not good for me, right? Why isn't that good for me? Obviously I got hit, but that situation isn't good for me because he has more reach. So he was able to step away as he cut and make the little glancing cut to the upper left corner of my or upper right corner of my mask from his perspective. Yeah, I made an arm cut, I think, in the process there, but they're throwing it out. So, and I think that's probably right. It was a little bit of a mess. So here I come in. I'm just trying something different because I come in Vomtag every time. So here I come in Flug. I have a very hunched down, very sort of constricted movement in Flug. I don't like it, but you know, it's just how I move. My body works. Kendrick's so tall and way up here. You know, he's got his Vomtag blade high. He's a little bit forward. His sword is a little bit forward, which means he's not making as full of a cut probably. So what I'm thinking at this point is an Absetzen, which is a move where I would bring the sword across my body, get the point on, basically make a covering thrust as he would, assumedly come in with a cut. I think better of it and come up to Vomtag because I think he knows what I'm doing. We had just talked about the Absetzen play earlier, and so I don't want to just give that away. So here I am in Vomtag. You can see Kendrick starting to move here. Kendrick's coming to the right with a feint, and now coming to the left with his actual cut. Now the feint to the right was out of measure, and the problem is he makes the left-handed cut without moving his left leg forward. So it's a bad body mechanic cut, and even worse for him, it remains out of measure. The first cut was out of measure. He didn't move forward with the second cut. The second cut is out of measure. I'm leaning back. I don't probably need to. I could probably have just engaged here. Probably what I should have done here is stepped a foot back and launched myself forward into him once he had made that cut. He's off balance here. He's crossing his feet almost, which is bad. He's just made a bad couple of out of measure engagements. But I don't get the step forward that I want. I've stepped my left leg back, so I either have to go into left Vomtag, which I don't want to do, or I have to go into a left side guard. I choose Alber rather. Again, bringing my sword low. He's got a point on guard, so that's good for me. I can come up and wind off the point on guard to try to displace it if he thrusts. I go into a more relaxed position because we're out of measure. He can't thrust me from where he's standing. I just reposition. He starts to move, and here now he comes in with a thrust. The thrust was out of measure. I make a mistake. I come up with my hands to try to displace that thrust. I didn't need to. It was out of measure. I could have kept my hands in place, but I'll come back to the right and parry that cut. He comes straight up over the top, still, I think the measure is poor. Can't see really any of what's going on there. You can't really see any of that, so it's just a mess. His cut eventually fell between my hands on my grip. My cut landed on his forearm. Again, he's just throwing a lot of cuts. They're not really great cuts at this point. He's sort of just throwing flurries of cuts. Audience decided not to cheer, so I, bounced up and down and asked for applause. Brian got a good little line in there. Okay, so we've had a couple of messy engagements, and now I'm looking. I see that he keeps feinting this right hand cut. So he feints this shallow right hand cut, takes a big step in with his right leg, and then comes to the left with a cut without stepping in. So here I'm thinking, no problem. He's going to make that same move. He's been making it all day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to throw a really fast Shielhao, deflect that cut, and get my point online. It works, but he launches his strike. Oh, this is a different engagement than I thought it was. Okay, so I don't know what happens here. Let's watch it. Oh. Yeah, this one's just a little bit of a mess. So this one, Kendrick's attacking first. He comes up short with the thrust. I lean back again. He comes straight down. He comes over my guard. Hits me in the head. Yeah, so that's that one. Yeah, got a nice blow to the head. And it came over my cross guard. I shouldn't have been moving backwards. I should have moved in to engage him. It was messy. I think this is the one I was thinking of. I come up to Vomtag. I'm looking. I'm seeing that right hand cut come in. I see the sword angled forward. So I'm thinking I can get behind it. A little bounce there. Plant my foot. He starts to go. I start to go. Now he's coming in with a middle how, that right-handed cut again. My cut is upside down for some reason. Oh, I guess I couldn't get my hand turned with the Spec Glove. But what I'm trying to do is a Shielhao, but it looks like the crossguard got stuck on the glove. What I'm trying to do is a Shielhao. Oh, there it is. What I'm trying to do is a Shielhao, and I plant my sword nicely into his collarbone, and you can see the nice thrust. Now, Kendrick's blow at the time I thought was pretty good. Actually, as I'm watching it back, it's a middle how. I think the bump. I actually don't think this is a great blow. I want to see the arc it traces, because what it looks like to me actually is that he's got his sword forward here. He's swinging high, and then he kind of swings low. And he's really not thrusting into me. I mean, the judges, the marshals can't see it, but he's really not swinging into me. He's really thrusting into my gambeson. So it's an ugly double. I mean, but in a real fight, my blow is killing him for sure. He has hit me in the chest. He's trying to wind over and thrust down, but it's not happening. Yeah, I just want to. Sorry, I mean, I know I'm just going to throw this out anyway, but yeah, I mean, he just kind of places the sword. He starts high. He changes his mind and just kind of puts the sword in there. I'll watch it one more time and then we'll move on. Yeah. Yeah. I actually think that double maybe isn't so ugly. I think that Kendrick starts his cut high and then arcs it low, taps the belly. My thrust was very strong and was good. So here he's doing Alber. He's doing left Alber, which isn't usually something that you see. I could approach this with a Scheitelhau. The thing for me that makes this version of Albert a little bit odd, and just how Kendrick does it, but it's fine, is his inside hand is above his outside hand and forward of it, so he's sort of almost like arcing his wrist really low. We'll see what he tries to do from there. So all he's really doing is raising his hands into my sword. Yeah, I've just tried to throw a Scheitelhau just to try to go over it. I actually have a nice cut on the arm there, which I didn't know about. He parries it off up high. He's trying to Sukin. He's trying to come off my sword and go around. I'm turning my sword in for a in just to cover, and then in for a Serkau, which looks like it actually caught his hands. And I got my point online. Yeah, I think it hit his guard. I don't think it hit his hands. This is the last exchange, I think. Kendrick comes in Flug, so I'm expecting a thrust. Now, Kendrick's in measure. If he steps and thrusts, he's well within reach here. So as soon as I get that foot down, I'm going in because I already know I'm in measure for him, which means he's in measure for me. I come up. I've got the sword. I've got the sword in a sword. How it's very high. That's partly just because Kendrick's very tall. I've thrown the sword. I think I'm probably trying to throw a Serkau. Yeah, I don't know what I'm throwing. It may even have been intended to be a Scheitelhau or a Shielhau. I get the cut. I get the deflection. His hands come way up. So what I again should be doing here, what you should be seeing is this left leg should be coming to the left, and the sword should be arcing around to here. This should be the target. Left leg came around to the left, maybe not far enough. Sword tried to arc around. Now he's just holding his hands in the air, basically trying to fend off my hands, not my sword. Right, you can see that here. Right. So I'm now stepping out again. I make another step to the left. I step right, and I shouldn't be stepping across. But what I'm trying to do is get a plant foot so that I can step left and try to work my sword around. Here again, he keeps catching my crossguard very tightly, but his structure is really, really awkward here. His sword is up and down, way up in the air. You know, really, I could have brought my sword down and into his stomach area. He brings a shot down. I just parry it as I'm coming in. Now, as I'm parrying here and stepping with my right foot should be coming here forward, and then I should be stepping with my left foot as I Serkau. So I just need to plant the right foot and go to the left side with the Serkau. There's the right foot planting. There goes the left foot. And instead of making a Serkau, which is what I should have done, for whatever reason, I tried to come straight over the top. I've brought my leg in much closer than I should. My leg should be moving out this way, and I've just made a cut straight down. My leg does finish its travel path, but now our hands are together, which of course is bad. I recognize this and go for the grapple. I take my left hand, get it up underneath his sword hand, his right hand for his sword. He's got his right hand trying to cover my right arm, my sword arm. Now look at the difference in. This is really worth noting. Look at the difference in position. Okay, it looks like it's the same, but look at the difference. His sword is high. He can't cut because his sword is vertical. My hand is on his hand and forearm area, and I'm holding. His hand is on my forearm. I think it's going to come down to my elbow, not even, right? And this is the result, of course, is Right, and if I just step forward, his hand is on my forearm. I can just pull my leg back, shove his sword crossguard back into his face. So this is like your lawnmower motion. You pull back on the right, push with the left, and then I'm able to make a nice cut inside. Hand comes across my hand comes across my body and brings the sword weak of the sword, the nice cutting area, 2/3 of the way down the blade, right into the lower left opening, and that's just a clean hit. I'll replay this whole bit for you. And a nice grunt there to finish. Anyway, it was great fighting with Kendrick, and he's such a good fighter, such a fun guy to fight against because of his measure. I think the heat was definitely getting to all of us. We had a really fun bout. So yeah, so all points go to Kendrick, and it was a lot of fun.